love this language. The words are similar than the words that I use to talk with my friends, with my family, in my routine, but there's something more. It's a language, poetry, English, Spanish, French, etc. And I wanted to learn that language, and that was that I started to try. I started to read poetry, I started to write poetry, and I started to write poetry not just in poems, also in stories, later in a novel, also in my essays, even in my articles. I always try to write it from the point, from the place of the poet. I think even, for example, I am not publishing poetry. We talked about that since, I don't know, 10 years ago. But I think poetry is always in my attitude as a writer. I think it's a language, it's the way that you, maybe so, I don't know, naive, but I try to look at reality with another attitude, with the attitude of a poet. That's what I am trying to do in my novels, in my fiction.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. What about you?
I love your question. Before I say anything that I don't think will be an answer, I just want to say thank you. I'm so happy to be here in Granada, and thank you to the festival, to all of the organizers, to each of you sitting here. It means so much all the way here from New York. And knowing that I was going to be in conversation with both of you has been something I've been excited about for months. So here we are in this place, and we are all together, which is a kind of poem to me. I think when I think about poetry, I agree with Elena. I don't have borders. It's a way of living. It feels like when I was young, if I listened to the rain, it could be a poem. If I could listen to my mother breaking the pasta and putting it into the boiling water, or chopping the potatoes, like chop, 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 I would make up these kind of songs. Or even if she were yelling at me because I did something wrong, that's a song. But I think there is a way of looking at colors and textures and listening to stories, especially stories from your family, or in the cafe and you hear someone talking and you start to listen, that poets can look toward others' lives to see their own life a bit more powerfully. Like, I keep looking at this beautiful ivy and I'm just like, I'm as connected to this as I'm connected to this, and the sound of this water, it is all making memory in my body right now, and then I will get to take that later. But I think for me, whether it's visual art or stories, prose, fiction or poetry, I usually feel the sense of a we when I'm writing. I have a sense of my mother and my grandmother, of other women poets or writers or artists of all kinds, of painters, that I feel present, almost like a village that I'm sitting in, and it's my turn to sing, my turn to listen, my turn to make one small mark on the cave wall. And so you kind of figure out which organ, as you're breathing into your work, which is the best organ. So sometimes you breathe and it's a poem. Sometimes you breathe and it's a story. Sometimes you breathe and it's, for me, a photograph or a painting or a drawing or a song or a video. And so I also like that, because then if I fail, I just keep going, and it was fun. You keep going with it. And I think life is like, can be that way too, of just with the journey of like all the scenes that come to you, the ones that you hold on to, the ones you forget, and then they come back to you, like memories of people who love you.
Great, yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, and so this rhythm and sound and this breathing, gets engaged with the act of writing, this idea. Well, I'd like you to tell us all a little bit about the process in finding your voices. How does this creativity that you were talking about, breathing, smells, how does this creativity make its way to the page?
Mm-hmm. For me, almost everything is about reading. Almost everything that I write is in some way an answer to a poem written by another, a story written by another. For me, it's like the first encounter with the text that I'm going to write. Mm-hmm. It's the text of another. For me, it's in some way, when I was a child, I started writing stories as a play when I was, 8 or 9 years old. And I remember that, for example, I tried to finish, in some way to rewrite the books that I was reading, mm-hmm. because I didn't like the final. It's like, okay, Christine Nestlinger, I don't like the final pages of this book that I am going to write. In some way, I was working as a publisher in that moment. I know, yeah. but for me, it was something, for example, I love this character and I want to imagine some adventures for him or for her. Mm-hmm. And in some way, 30 years later, I am trying to... I am still working in that way. But also, for me, it's very important. I think in my routine and it's something linked to poetry for me, at least it's to listen and to see. For example, in my neighborhood or in the underground or in the bus, to listen the conversation of the people.
What you said, this orality.
It's like making like a collage with my imagination and with, for example, in Las Maravillas, in the wonders, I tried to insert in some way some conversations that I heard in the underground. Even there's a chapter with the main mm-hmm. character listening at the same. In some way, she was me. Mm-hmm. I was her.
Yeah, this recognition of the stories, mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree that reading can be the foundation of. There's a question that the writer is offering you or you are offering. There's an exchange that happens. I also am very just kind of the lyric. So sounds and nature for me allow me to almost not be as easily distracted as I usually am of wanting to pull the entire world into my eyes, into my heart, into my spirit, and then write, one word, or in English, 26 letters. That's all I have. I've got 26 letters. But there's so much more that I have, and so I want to get there. And sometimes, if I can hear, it's not necessarily turning on music, because then I'm like, listen to the music. But I'm just very quiet to listen almost internally to the thing I might not usually hear. Just when you wake up from the dream that you had, or as you're going to bed, there's like something, if you're looking here, it's like over here. Mm-hmm. And then you say, what is that? Who is that talking? Is that my mother? Is that my sister? Is that someone who is not here anymore? Is that a ghost? What is the story? So I think for me, I have to sometimes, almost every morning, it sounds so like, the poet, looking at trees, then feeling like I'm very small, but I have something I must say or ask, so I'm going to try. So I think there's a combination of just sound, and it's the body. And I think just before we came up here, we were saying there's so many bridges, actually the three of us, in our work that connect us even though we've never met. That there were all these spaces that are very meaningful and powerful in our own stories and lives that were happening in kind of this constellation, and now we get for a moment to say, this is the whole picture of it, before we go back into our lives and stories, and who knows in how many years we'll come back together, and we'll have more that is in common probably, but we have this moment. And I feel like that's this sense of time in the process of, you know, I need to have some coffee because I'm a nightmare if I don't, but then I'm gonna look at some trees, I'm gonna get into my body, I'm gonna put the dream down and step into the page, and having some words or some paintings near, some art to look at, and then I say, okay, I'm warmed up now to receive and listen.
Great, wonderful. Well, of course, I'd like to have this conversation by linking the common features that we have found, we were talking about that, in your narratives, in Promise and the Wonders. In the case of Wonders, very obviously gender and class, and in the case of Promise, gender, race, and also class, you know, so there are a lot of things in common. Both novels trace the story, the lives of 3 generations of women, grandmother, mother, in the case of Promise, 2 daughters, and in the case of Wonder, 1 daughter. And there are other secondary characters that I'm really, really interested in, so we have to talk about them, please, you know. And I think it's very interesting how you explore from, of course, the female experience, because it's all about women, you know. We have the voice of the women, we don't have the perspective of men in any case, you know, and how they are central to identity. I am really interested in the vulnerability of the characters, you know, so the question is for both of you, starting with the child, the young person, the teenager, as a literary subject. I think that's very important because it's the body still information, and how this coming of age comes because of menstruation, you know, pregnancy and unwanted pregnancy and all these things, you know. And it seems to me that in some way, I may be mistaken, you seem to be talking to your younger selves. Especially the character of Cynthia, I don't know, and when I met you the other day, it's like there's something of Cynthia, or, you know, it's like this attitude. I don't know, Maria, or could you tell us about this a little bit, you know, if you're, how, is there any projection of your younger selves in this?
When I wrote Promise, I was thinking of my mother as a girl. And I thought my mother grew up in the 1950s in places where she would have to have gone to the back of a house to come in. She would have been told that she can clean people's toilets, she cannot go to school, she can only be, you know, at best, you know, maybe a teacher would be the biggest thing that she could be. There were a lot of things she was told she couldn't be. And my mother grew up, and we talked about class, with no shoes to go to school. When she went to school, she would often faint because she was so hungry. And her mother died when she was very young, so then she didn't have the mother to raise her. She was, her and her family, on the sidewalk with all of their furniture being evicted because they couldn't pay for the rent. Even though I grew up in a middle-class family, because my mother's trauma as a child, that all went into my system. And it still stays into my system wherever I go. The space of work that women do, and men, but the worker, the person who is cleaning the toilet, the person who is making sure the bread is hot when it's placed on the table, the person who's putting little flowers on the vase on the table where I'm having breakfast at the hotel, I think about their hands that are turning the sheets and the pillows so that I can have a good rest. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about my mother and wanting to make a promise to her that I would live a different life, and thinking about the way the word promise that mothers, grandmothers, daughters, sisters, women, but also parents make to their children. When do you make a promise that you must break because the world has already broken you, broken your life? When do you promise a beloved that you will never betray or harm them, and then you do? When do you, keep a promise to yourself? The promises that I have for myself, many I have broken, but many I'm keeping, and there are more ahead. I haven't met those promises yet. So I think for me, in the place of Cynthia, there's some parts of me, but Cynthia is also, I don't have children, so she's my daughter in a way. And so I'm going back in time across trauma against racial trauma to go in a store and watch a man or a policeman follow me and my mother and make us open our bag because we must be thieves, we must have stolen something. Our money's no good because we're already criminals because we're brown. No. So there's so much happening on so many different levels in promise that there are women who are very radical, but there are things that happen in the vulnerability of women's bodies and stories that astonish me and give me strength. And there were things that happened to me I would never tell my mother. They would break her heart. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's something about the heart for any of us, men or women. The word promise, it stretches. Mm-hmm. It gets narrow. It's like a breath. Yeah. And so that's some of the things for me. When we met the other night, I was so happy. One of the first things you told me, my daughter. Me and my daughter. And I said, oh, I know Rosa is an amazing mother. And it made me so happy.
Oh, thank you.
And that's what I mean. Like it's that joy.
Yeah, and that's also the promise of silence. You said you wouldn't tell your mom that. Yes. Also, silence is a promise. Yeah, and
when I was thinking about the presence of the body in my novel, I was thinking in something I think maybe very different than the presence in Eliza's novel, because the body about that I was writing about is the body, for example, of an old rich woman. There's a chapter where one of the main characters, Maria, she's working, caring of an old woman, and she's I don't know how to say. I lost the word. La está bañando. La está bañando. But I was writing that scene, and I was thinking I want to write about this body because usually we are not reading about these bodies, this kind of bodies, the body of a very old woman. She's almost dying, and she's not present in our. I don't know how to say, in our imaginary. If you don't write about that, if something is not written, it's not in some way it's not happening because nobody's going to save the memory of that. And I wanted to write about that kind of body. And also, I was thinking.
For the quotation.
I was thinking about this. Is the
es templanza.
Sí, la templanza.
Because I had the quotation because I wanted to talk about that, and it's just a wonderful, that really when I was reading that, I was just trapped by that description because it seems like she was changing the diapers of a baby, and you continue reading, and no, she's not changing the diapers of a baby. It's an old woman with that old body, vulnerable. It's like gives me the shivers because it's so beautiful and so tender and so caring. And it's like. It makes you think of another chapter, which is La Casa, when Maria has to abandon her daughter, but she is working in a high-class people house, taking care of another baby, and she says that baby smells sweet, and we have the changing of the diapers of the baby, and we have that instilled in our mind, and then when Doña Sisi, which is the old woman, is changing the diapers, it's like really moving and breathtaking. It's absolutely beautiful.
In Eliza's novel, there's something about the smell of a character.
Yeah.
And I was reading.
Yeah, it's interesting because smell is very important. I was also, another thing that called my attention is when Maria gets to visit her own daughter in Cordoba for a weekend or something, the baby smells of tobacco. It's like contradictory because how can the baby smell of tobacco? It's because her brother was taking care of her and the brother smoked. It was in, I don't know, it was the 70s or something. It was earlier, so people smoked because people were smoking here.
Yeah.
I remember my daughter was a baby and people were smoking in bars, so this is kind of a new thing. And smell, and how she remembered the smell of tobacco of her own baby and the sweet smell of this is interesting, but yes, I'm happy that you heard that.
And there's also something when I was writing this novel, because the body of the rich people is so different than the body of the people, of the working class people. I was, for example, thinking about my aunts, the sisters of my father, because most of them, they worked as cleaners or cookers in Cordoba and Madrid mainly, and I remember that they seemed older than their ages, and I remember mostly the hands and even the bodies, the backs even, and I have this feeling of, okay, this is not written, or if it's written by people who are looking at them from a hierarchy in some way. It's like I am thinking in some Spanish writers that I love. For example, I love Carmen Martín Gaite. She's one of my favorite writers, but or for example Ignacio Aldecoa, Luis Martín Santos, those writers from the middle last century, and they were writing about working class people, but from their places, from the bourgeoisie in some way, and there was a difference. It was like, okay, I am here and I am looking at here and talking about them, and I wanted to break that and break my remember of my family.
Your memories, yeah. Well, it's talking about smells. Your novel smells of money. Well, not of money, of the lack of money. This is a big issue, and class is also very present in your novel. And I have a lot of notes here, because I want to talk about maternity, stretch marks in the body, and, but I don't want to miss the opportunity because I'm really interested in that, in talking about some, we could call secondary characters, because I'm really fond of those secondary people, in the movies and everything. And there's this story, Maria, and then Carmen, that doesn't have a presence in the story, much presence in the story, and the presence of Carmen fascinates me, as it fascinates me the presence of Ruby. Why? I was like, I want more. I want to know more about Carmen. I want to know more about Ruby. I want to know what happens to them, you know? Because Carmen, the invisibility of the body of Carmen, you know, she just appeared in that chapter napping in the room when the children are doing the homework, whatever, until that phone call happens, you know, and Carmen is absolutely changed, and Alicia changes because of that. And then Ruby was Ezra's best friend, you know, and Ruby was white, and Ezra is black. And when they had their periods, you know, and things happen, they're separated, you know. Well, the story of the teachers is really incredible, Miss Barton, with a symbolic name. But Ruby changes, totally, you know, and Ezra said we could not change, we could not share our blackness with her, and that's interesting. And Ruby changed because of money, because of position, you know, and I would like you to tell me how money, or the lack of it, you know, and this class difference, because I think like there is a gender novel class, you know, but it's like they are classed gender women, class, race, and gender. Everything is like a medley. So would you like to tell us something about money, class power, and this thing?
I wrote all the chapters about Carmen, but I decided to remove from the novel because I wanted.
I want to read them.
Yeah, well, I got it in my laptop. Because I wanted. I as a reader, I love books. I love open books in the way that you can add with your imagination, experience, prejudice. Okay, I am completing in some way this character or this scene, this chapter, because I suppose something, I imagine something. In some way, Antonio Gamoneda, I am going to quote Antonio Gamoneda in English.
Darling, Antonio Gamoneda.
Antonio Gamoneda.
Can you believe
that?
that?
Obviously, it's not.
We are in tune.
It's not the words, but he says something similar to that when someone is reading a poem, in his case, is in some way rewriting and completing the poem. And as a reader, I love that idea, and obviously
That's
as a writer, I want to try it at least. I don't know if the result is in this. I don't know if the result is okay, but I wanted to.
You made a ghost
this,
out of it.
yeah, I want to leave this big space, big open space to the reader to think about, okay, why Carmen is doing this, or why Carmen is broken, I don't know, this connection with the mother, or even if this is not Carmen, if it's Maria, if it's Alicia, who are broken this connection with this character, because I wanted to open the novel in that way, and also because for me, as a writer, is so much. For me, it's funny. I don't know if funny is the expression, but to work with a ghost.
It's wonderful that you did it. Because
it's. I don't know. I can use her in every chapter in the way that I prefer. And that's something related to class, to social class, and related also to money, because Carmen is the character who is like, I don't know if ascending in some way, because it's very close to the history of our country, because in the early 90s, there was this, I don't know, this years of richness. I don't know if it was the idea. And during those years, she has this I don't know, this feeling of, okay, I am going to leave my neighborhood, to live in a better neighborhood, in a better apartment, to have my money.
Happened.
And
It never happened. Yeah.
she's this character who has some money.
And she
in
was
some way,
silenced after that. So it's that invisibility of Carmen, that is so symbolic, as the invisibility of Ruby. I was like very interested in that invisibility of Ruby at the same time of this. It's interesting because for Maria, Carmen is a victim, and for Alicia, Carmen is a fiend, so they're like trapped there, and it's also interesting because the figure of the father and the mother of Ruby also have a lot to do with that. So could you tell us a little bit, why you decided to dilute Ruby in the novel and make it disappear, and that's it, bye Ruby.
It's so interesting to me that it's very similar. The book was first kind of alternating chapters of Ruby and Cynthia, and then Ruby was such a loud character.
I know.
She just wanted to talk. I'm like, girl.
You had to silence her, I understand that.
You talk too much. And so I said, well, whose story is this? Not that there is ever in any story one person who owns the story or to who it belongs, but Ruby had so much to say, and I realized that in my own education, I've been taught to prioritize the external dominant education or language or stories or narratives or whatever, and so I had to switch perspective with Ruby. And what happens with Ruby, there's a heartbreaking kind of moment with her and Ezra, where as children they've been inseparable. They've been really girls, they get their periods together, they are running around in this kind of gorgeous natural environment with the water and the mountains and
doing forbidden
the
things.
Sky. They're playing these games, they're climbing trees, they're they want to be pilots and be whatever they want, and the world starts to come in at every corner and say, not for you, not for you, for you, not for her. And they suddenly start to be confused, bewildered. And this kind of educating that happens to girls and women. So Ruby is starting to learn. She can't learn it from her parents, actually, because her parents are pariah in this little village because they don't have any money. Her mother has beauty, but nothing else, and the father has, sadly, this awful kind of history that makes him unable to kind of participate in the America that is happening in the 1950s. He's not the Rockefeller, Carnegie man, self-made man. He's not going to be that. And so she doesn't have the teacher of telling her, this is who you can be. And so she has this teacher who starts to tell her, this is what your inheritance can be because you are white, because you are this. And so Ezra also from her parents get this other education. You're getting to the time now where you two cannot be friends in the world. It is not allowed. You will be the servant and she will be the mistress of the house. And both girls want freedom, ultimately, but they don't know what that means, just in the way the word promise, the word dream. What is whiteness? What is blackness? What is freedom? What is your nature inside? These girls literally look at their bodies and they're like, but the world says, no, that is a valuable body and this is not. This is a body that can be lynched or killed or used in other ways as capitalism, as commercial. And so I think personally when I was young, I had many heartbreaking moments that devastated me where I thought I could be free. And in your spirit as an artist, as a person, as anything, it's an awful education. It's an awful moment that you must resist every moment to say, no, I know there can be something else. And I will remember it and dream it by writing it, even if it's just for myself, and maybe someone else will see it too and remember their own story, their own version of someone who can even love you very much, saying, I'm going to keep you safe and protect you by teaching you how this world is so that it doesn't kill you. That is very profound to me.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, there is a devastating quotation in the novel. Ruby said that her mom told her that nobody could be poorer in the world than niggers. Absolutely, as you said, the word pariah. And this is how she fabricates, this new personality in which is. Well, we're running out of time, so. I feel like we could be talking forever, Would you like to add anything else, like influences? There is something of some writer in your work, influences that you have or you wish you had, or just to conclude our conversation?
Mine is very, very brief, and I see Lara up there. I cannot begin to say what it means to me to come to Granada, where Federico Garcia Lorca was born. He is my favorite poet.
Wow.
And so to be here is such a gift to my spirit, and so I just say thank you to Granada.
Thank you. And you, Elena?
For me, Federico García Lorca was the beginning of everything. I think you are exhausted of listening. But it was, for me, obviously the beginning of my relation with poetry, and my real relation with writing. And I also want to add a name, because we were talking about poetry and body and literature. There's a poet called Ángela Figuera y Merich. I love her since I was, a teenager, because I read Belleza Cruel. And I learned, reading her poems, how you can write about politics, strong political poems, strong political literature, in the places there are, maybe linked to women in the domestic places. I remember all these poems about women in kitchens, in the living room, women in the market, and for me it was, it was like another beginning. For me. If you don't know her poems, please read her, and if you know her poems, please reread her again.
Great. So I have a proposal. When new convention, when we talk about literary periods, we are going to refer to literature before Federico and literature after Federico. So that's going to be it. Okay, thank you very much for being here with us today. It's been really a gift. Time just flew, and that's it. Thank you all for coming here.
No pasa nada. Bueno, thank you very much, Liza, Rosa, Elena, for being here and for such an interesting conversation about the body. What a thing. Well, voy al español ahora ya, que se me da igual de mal que el inglés, pero bueno. Bueno, muchísimas gracias a todos los asistentes. Os quería preguntar si hay gente para firmar libros, porque vamos a montar un poco pifostio para poner 2 mesitas. Si no hay mucha gente para firmar, firmamos aquí arriba. Entonces, para que me levantáis las manitas, si habéis traído vuestros libros para firmar o algo, ¿No? Vale, pues entonces no ponemos mesa. Dani, que está por ahí escuchándome o viéndome, no ponemos mesa. Bueno, sin más, si alguien tiene algún librito para firmar, os podéis acercar por aquí. Os recuerdo que a las 8:30 tenemos el acto de clausura de Cultural, algo que parecía tan lejano hace 2 días y que de repente lo tenemos aquí ya, en el que, bueno, vamos a estar en el Palacio de Carlos V en una conversación entre Mariana Enríquez y Gracia Morales, con el título La noche es nuestra. Y sí, la noche es nuestra, va a serlo. Espero que vengáis, que lo disfrutéis y muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos en todos los eventos a los que hayáis venido y en este, por supuesto. Muchas gracias.